Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Good evening. It's Alexandra with Vidat. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Okay. All right. You wanna
I turn my speaker off. So
okay.
it won't echo in.
So I guess we're waiting on a few more time we got.
27. We have,
Okay.
looks like Megan from transportation is indicating 2.
Oh, she is?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I didn't see them.
Well, I won't turn that camera on too, a bit, you know.
Don't turn it on yet, please. Keep standing by.
Yeah, his mic is on. I still got my mic on.
Yeah, he does.
Oh,
Yeah.
Hey, Ruben.
Hey there. How are
Hey,
you guys?
good. How are you doing? And this is Emily. Do you have anybody else from your team who's joining you?
Yes, Scott Bigger should be joining here shortly.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was on the lookout for that name so we can make sure
Yeah,
he's a
uh,
co-host.
Yep, he should be long on.
Okay, and I'm gonna wait just like 2 more minutes before, well, in fact, till 6:30 to do where I just admit everybody who's in the waiting room.
Hey Emily, this is Ruben. Scott should be waiting in the lobby type thing.
It says the meeting.
Hey,
Does he
Ruben,
have-
is he SLB 7255?
Yeah,
Yes, sir. That's gonna be him.
Okay, all right.
Got him.
Ask what his title is.
Hey, Ruben, what's his title? What's his
His
rank?
rank.
He's a lieutenant.
Thank you.
okay.
Okay, there you go.
I'm muted right now. And I've got the video on too. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll read out the questions as they're.
Yeah, I'm muted right now. I got it muted. And camera's off.
Yeah, we can hear you. I think you're not muted.
This is Adam. Are we ready for me to let the people in from the waiting room?
All right, yeah, that works. Okay, we're live.
Oh, we're on four.
Yeah.
No, we're good. All right.
Yeah.
Well, good evening, everyone. Supervisor Boddye and Angry here. Thank you so much for joining us for our traffic safety town hall. The Reno show is going to be, we're going to do a couple brief introductions. We have personnel here from Prince William DOT, VDOT, and the PD. We're going to have a few different presentations from those different panelists, and then we'll dive into a Q&A session. The Q&A, we're going to start with pre-advanced questions. So a lot of you registered online ahead of time. Thank you for doing that. We'll get to those questions first. And then as the presentations are going forward, if you have questions that you want to ask the panelists, please put them in the chat and our staff will sort of go through them, curate them, and then we'll get to those at the end of the pre-arranged questions. Supervisor, do you want to add anything?
No, that's a good opening. Just to say good evening. I know this has kind of been a long time coming. We did this once before. This would be round 2 of that. So got a lot of stuff going on in the county. We know that traffic and pedestrian safety has been a hot topic. So looking forward to this round of discussion. And thank you to all of our county staff that's joined us, including Mr. Alexander. I see Dan's on the line. So glad you're joining us on this. And let's just get it going.
Sure. So for folks online watching, the county staff that we have with us today is from the Prince William County Department of Transportation. We have Richard Weinman, Salah Salem, Megan Landis, and then from VDOT, the Virginia Department of Transportation, we have Alexander Chaliska. And then from our local brave women and men in blue from our Prince William PD, we have Captain Castilla and Lieutenant Scott Baker. So with that, we are first going to turn it over to our own transportation department folks, and we'll start with Richard Weinman and his team.
Thank you, Supervisor Boddye and Supervisor Angry, and everyone this evening for giving us this opportunity to engage with you. I haven't prepared a formal presentation. I would rather hear from the community on the issues and concerns. Prince William County Department of Transportation is your county transportation, and we respond to your citizen requests. My team, which consists of Salah Salem, who's with us tonight, and a couple of other staff members, are the traffic safety and engineering team. And one of the programs that we have that is critical to the county and the public is the residential traffic calming program. Inside that, we install things such as speed tables and pole-mounted speed stays and other traffic calming devices on local residential roads. That process generally involves doing a speed study to verify there's a speeding problem, and then working with VDOT to go through the process to come up with a traffic calming plan that we then bring to the community to then either through HOA resolutions or petitions and that kind of thing to document community support before we proceed with having board public hearings and proceeding with those installations. In the time that I've been at the county, I've never yet had a supervisor turn down one of these requests for funding. So the funding and the support from the supervisors is always there on this, as well as other safety initiatives. So we really appreciate the support from the supervisors and the county executive and whatnot on this. In addition to this, we look at other issues, transportation issues such as pedestrian safety, and we help develop and scope those projects. And most of the Department of Transportation in Prince William County is focused on building projects and making these improvements and finding the funding to enable that, and working with the supervisors and the communities and community organizations to make sure that the transportation and safety needs are being met. As Supervisor Angry and Boddye earlier said, you know, transportation and traffic safety, road safety is a very hot topic at the moment. Unfortunately, this is probably due to the fact that across the country, we are seeing traffic patterns change, possibly as a result of COVID. And this is seeing increase in incidents and severe incidents, not only in Prince William County, but across the state and nationally. And it's very concerning for us. We're doing a lot to try address that, working with VDOT and our colleagues in Prince William County Police. But any ideas or thoughts, we really do appreciate, because we have a long way to go. And with that said, my mantra at all these meetings and whenever I engage with the public is we don't know what we don't know. And hopefully tonight you can help better inform us on what your needs are and where you are having issues. With that, I'll pass it back to you, Supervisor Angry and Boddye.
Thank you so much, Richard, for that presentation and all the hard work you're doing. I know that you and your team are laser focused on making our roadways and our crossways and what have you safer for pedestrians, for motorists, for bicyclists. So we appreciate all the work that you all do with our offices and the community to make that happen. Next, we will hear from VDOT, Alexandra Tuliska. Alexandra, the floor is yours.
Good evening. I'm Alexandra Tuliska, working with Virginia Department of Transportation over 30 plus years. And I want to say that VDOT's primary function, we're responsible for building, maintaining, operating states' roads and bridges and tunnels. And our mission is to program, develop, operate, and manage the roadway network and make sure that everybody arrive alive. That is the theme of our safety program. We have a lot of information that is available to the public on a VDOT webpage. There is a dashboard that has the latest statistics, the safety, the number of crashes, the fatalities, and so forth. It is all available for view. And like Richard mentioned, probably COVID, you can see the statistics pretty much that the number of crashes dipped, coinciding with the COVID in 2020, and then spiked back up the following year. And now hopefully we will trend about the same. That's pre-COVID. The traffic volume and speeds and everything has returned to pre-COVID values, so to speak. We are working very closely with the county, and the standards are based on the national standard that we are using on the safety, and we take any opportunity in our programs also to improve it. And even in the paving programs, we have some systemic safety projects that measures that we can implement with the paving program. And those include safety wedges on the roadways with shoulders and ditch, rumble strips in the center line or at the edges, curve markings, pedestrian crosswalks, unsignalized intersections. And we have added also the yellow flashing arrows at signalized intersections as a safety measure, as well as the back plates at the signal heads. So that increases the visibility that for the drivers. Those are small things, but they make a difference. And pretty much, again, I would like, if anybody would like to see any statistics or see any numbers and so forth, this is all available on our webpage. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander.
Thank you for that. Next, we're going to hear from the Prince William PD, Captain Castilla and Lieutenant Baker. The floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. I won't take too much time. I would just say that we're here to answer your questions. I know we hear a lot through the community, through you supervisors. Thank you for hosting this, and we'll stand by for questions. I might have to run out. I'll come back. I have two things going on at the same time, but Lieutenant Bigger has a lot of stats if that comes up. So we're here to serve and to answer some questions.
All right, appreciate that. Thank you, gentlemen, for being on here with us. And I appreciate you juggling us with other stuff. I know you're a very busy man, Captain Castilla, so I appreciate you. That said, we're going to shift to the questions. And like I said before, we're going to start with the advanced questions. And I think this is going to be one for you, Alexandra, since you did talk about statistics quite a bit. How does Prince William County traffic statistics compare to other areas of Northern Virginia, and the nation? So, for example, driving is a risk, mitigation is expensive, and sort of balancing all those sort of different issues as it comes to traffic statistics. So I guess the question mostly is, how do we rate? Are we a more dangerous community when it comes to traffic than say Fairfax, Arlington, Alexandria, Loudon? Are we peers? Have you any elaboration you can just shed on that, please?
Yes, we do have statewide statistics, and we could maybe speak from that. VDOT, I mean, Virginia, you know, the VDOT is pretty much divided into 9 districts. Northern Virginia is one of the 9, and our district is comprised from Fairfax, Prince William, Loudoun, and primary roads in Arlington County. So our statistics are based on that. So we have the number of crashes and fatalities. You could sort it by statewide and compare it to the Northern Virginia district. So I don't have the specific numbers for Prince William County, but perhaps the Prince William Police might have that additional information, that level of detail. Generally speaking, I mean, and this is available on the dashboard on the VDOT webpage. Just at the very bottom of the page, there is a word dashboard, and the webpage is virginiadot.org. If anyone wants to look at that, and then go to the dashboard in the lower left hand of the page, and you could bring up those graphs. But I have printed the graphs, and I can just tell you that for all of Virginia, we have data from up to August of this year. So this year, the number of crashes was 76,000 plus, but the year is not over yet. And so we still have a quarter of a year pretty much to be added to this. The trend went a little bit down from last year. And so this was statewide, and in Northern Virginia, the traffic crashes are about 16,000 plus. So again, the trend is mimicking, you know, the same, the graphs are kind of looking, you know, that they're going down a little bit, but like I said, the year is not quite over yet. Fatalities, we have a record of statewide fatalities at 855 this August, and that was statewide. And in Northern Virginia, we had 98. And again, the year is not quite over yet. And that fatalities, that is somewhat, you know, the spike last year was definitely, you know, visible. We had 104 fatalities last year in Northern Virginia. So that's how we look like. However, if you kind of look at, we also have on the webpage the crashes that are represented on the map in graphical form, and you can see the dots and the concentration of these crashes. They are not concentrated in any specific areas. They are spread out pretty much evenly. So it doesn't indicate that there is one area more dangerous than the other. And that's pretty much all I could say, that, you know, people are driving and perhaps being a little more impatient and a little bit more distracted, and the crashes happen. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And Richard, I see your hand is up. I figured you might be able to add some elaboration to that question as well.
Thank you, Supervisor Boddye. Yes, as you are aware, and many of the people in the public may not be aware, we have a working group with Prince William County Police Traffic, looking at traffic safety. And in that working group, we have VDOT, DMV, and state troopers and whatnot. The pattern that we've seen over the last few years is, as Alexandra said, as soon as COVID hit, we saw a decrease in traffic and commuting traffic, and overall we saw a decrease in the number of accidents. Unfortunately, what we saw as well is with the emptier roads, vehicles appear to have started moving faster, which meant that we saw more severe accidents. And that's why last year was not a good year in Prince William County for fatalities and severe accidents. Unfortunately, this year is not looking great either. It doesn't appear to be as bad as last year, but we are still seeing too many accidents. And as traffic is starting to resume to some kind of normalcy and people starting to drive on the roads again, we've seen that the numbers of accidents come up. Most of these accidents that we're seeing, and I'm sure my colleagues in police can confirm this, that we're seeing to behavioral issues, particularly in the severe accidents, speed, alcohol, drugs, driving under influence, those kind of things, pedestrians at night not wearing dark clothes and those kind of things. And unfortunately, many of these are preventable, but again, they're behavioral things. And as Alexandra said, we're not seeing any real clusters or patterns at specific locations. But we got a lot of work still to do, and we're looking at it continually to try and make those improvements.
Appreciate that, Richard. Thank you. Did our gentleman from the police department have anything that they wanted to add to that before we move on to the next question?
Mr. Boddye, this is Lieutenant Beggar, if you can hear me.
Yep.
Just a couple stats that I pulled up before this meeting. The county this year, now remember, this isn't going to count Manassas City, and it's not going to count anything that the Virginia State Police handles. We have 22 total fatalities within the county this year, 8 of which are pedestrians. And I broke it down further. In both of your districts, it's only 4. So the majority of them seem to be on out west and on the Route 1 corridor where they're occurring. And that's what we have right now. That was the only thing I was going to add on that.
Thank you for that.
Supervisor Boddye, also Ruben here. It's what Richard mentioned, the behavior, that is a big part of it. So whether it's speed, crossing a street, dark clothing, unfortunately, that's a sad, often too common part of the equation that, of course, in this case, is deadly. So I'm going to step out and I'll be back, but I'll be here till 7, and then Lieutenant Biggers will answer all my questions.
Thank you for that.
All right, thanks. Hey, I'm going to take this next question because it's very specific to Neabsco and Dale City. What can be done to reduce the speed limit on Dale Boulevard? Now, before I turn that over to staff to jump in on that, I want to say a few things about Dale Boulevard and folks that know Dale Boulevard. It is a neighborhood road. We do know that from Hoadley to Minnieville, I'll say that's where your largest concentrations of houses are, and literally, driveway right off of Dale Boulevard. The speed limit ranges from 35 down to 25 and basically 35 miles an hour. And once you pass Minnieville, it gets up to 45, opens up a little bit more. But as we know, Dale Boulevard is called the Rolling Dales for a reason, because it's all hills and curves. The issue that I'm seeing, because I drive that, I live on the Hoadley end and I work on the eastern end all the way to where my office is here off 95. And the issue is people, to all of our speakers' points, are just driving faster than what they should. And that has nothing to do with speed limits, I'll tell you that, because I've got 3 schools on that road, 3 zones where the flashers say 25 miles an hour. And when you're doing 50 and a 25 in a school zone and you're watching kids on the sidewalk, you're either not paying attention or you really don't care about traffic and pedestrian safety. To me, that's what we need to be trying to address, is how do we get people to actually, A, stop texting and driving, because I see it all the time. B, stop thinking a yellow light means you got to speed up. Actually, not even yellow anymore, a red light. You have to fly through a red light that's literally a red light. Now people on the other end are waiting 5 seconds before they move on a green light. We shouldn't have to retrain our brains on a green light when your light was red in the first place. You can't do that. Now, and I see Mr. Almond on the call with me because I want to put red light, stoplights at every light, but I know we can't do that. But we have to find a way to retrain people to pay attention to these traffic laws and lights that we have. I'll say that there. I don't think lowering the speed limit is going to get us anywhere. I would ask if anybody wants to chime in from either of our VDOTs or police. There's Richard. I see Richard's hand. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Supervisor Angry. So the way speed limits work is the fact that we have a speed limit on Dale Boulevard, and as Supervisor Hangry has already pointed out, and I think most people will have observed this mostly around the county, most people are not obeying the speed limit anyway. The reality is if we drop that speed limit by 5-10 miles per hour, the reality is people are going to drive the speed that they're comfortable driving at on that road. One of the problems we have is, of course, is cars are continually getting safer and better. Unfortunately, you know, we're all getting older and our reflexes and stuff aren't quite as good as they were when we were younger either. So reducing speed limits can in certain cases help, but the reality is that it has a very small impact. The thing that I think is the key thing is to try do some other measures to remind people that what the speed limit is rather than actually decreasing it. And as Supervisor and Boddye know, and anyone who's been watching the board meetings over the last year, the county, the working group I spoke with a little bit is looking at automated enforcement in school zones and for red light cameras and those kind of things. And we're in the final stages of that to come back and present that to the board. So we are looking at all these alternatives and enforcement and all those kind of things. But fundamentally, I mean, the key thing you got to remember is we're all responsible for our own safety. And, you know, all the change in the world you want to see starts with you. When we look at the data that we collected in the photo enforcement feasibility study in the school zones, we found about 20% of the vehicles in those school zones are speeding 10 miles over the posted speed limit. So whenever we go to these meetings, everyone goes, it's not me, it's not me, it's not me. Well, it's 1 in 5 people. So if there's 50 people on this call tonight, 10 of you probably went through a school zone today over the speed limit and 10 miles over the speed limit. So I just encourage everyone to be aware and cognizant, especially now with daylight savings kicking in. There's been a shift and change in light, and it's a very challenging time as we go into winter. So everyone just be safe out there, but generally reducing speed limits does not have the effect we would like to have, because the reality is, unfortunately, too many people, especially the ones that are involved in the severe accidents, don't pay attention to the speed limit anyway.
Thank you for that, Richard.
Can I just add one more offer to this as well? Because I know folks that live along Dale Boulevard have great concerns. There are some portions of Dale Boulevard where accidents, fatalities happen more frequent than other areas. And so we're looking in those areas to try to figure out something there. Richard, I think you know that one corner I'm talking about down near help me out, Carrydale area. That's more of a congested area. And there's some curves in that area that seem to have higher accident rates than normal. So we are looking at that, but don't have a real solution or something to offer for that yet. But I just want to make those aware who do travel Dale Boulevard and see that that is a high hazard place. You know, there are some areas that are a little more stressful than others or hazardous than others, and we are working on trying to figure out a solution that will benefit everybody.
Supervisor Angry, this is Captain Castilla. As you know, I work very closely with your office and your constituents that mentioned to us about the speeding. You're right. It's a very busy road, probably one of the busiest, I guess, in the district. Doing times and as calls for service allowed. I know I have my radar operators, our traffic unit doing the daytime up to 7 o'clock or so are out there doing what they can to slow things down. What Richard said, people's behavior, people's driving is sometimes a little scary because they're only concerned about getting to point B from point A. They'll pass cruisers. And of course, my folks make traffic stops on those folks just to encourage them to slow down and issue summonses. So we try to hit, you know, our district goes from Liberia in the city down to Occoquan. It takes up all of Dale City down to the fairground. So it's a large piece of real estate. And again, patrolling all the streets and encouraging safe driving is paramount. And we try to get that between calls for service and all else that comes up our way. So I'm going to slip out and like I said, Lieutenant Bigger will answer the rest. I'll be back.
Thank you for that. The next question, actually, Mr. Weinman, you actually alluded to this already. You spoke a little bit about it. The question is the county considering a red light program? And is there a way for residents to request a red light camera enforcement in a particular area of the county?
Certainly. So for those that are not aware, photo enforcement or automated enforcement is a big topic. It became the state code changed about 2 years ago to allow it in Virginia for school zones, construction zones, for red lights and for passing of school buses. Over the last year, since about March, the county has been doing a feasibility study to look at this, to roll it out. As many people may be aware, it's a very contentious issue, and if it's not done properly, can create a lot of issues. And that's why we've been tried to be very thorough to collect the correct information to work out what the impacts that would be. So we are looking at a red light photo enforcement program, or reviewing it currently, and depending on, we will be bringing that to the board in the next month or so. We're just finalizing that, and then once we bring that to the board, we'll be looking for guidance from the board on how to proceed. Most of our neighboring jurisdictions are implementing some form of program. Fairfax is just announced and passed the ordinance is required to do a pilot for school zones. City of Manassas Park already have red light and school zones that they're implementing currently, as well as city of Fairfax, Arlington, all across. Automated enforcement is a great tool. It has a lot of benefits. One of the big benefits is it takes those patrol units that would be working a school zone and makes them available to look at other roads and more severe violations possibly. So it can free up those resources and whatnot. But again, it is something we're looking at, and if you follow the board meetings in the next few months, you'll probably see some serious movement, because I know several members of the board are pushing for it.
Yeah, but you got two of them right here, so we appreciate that, Richard. So Al, we do see your hand up. We will get to your question here after we get through a couple more of the prearranged questions, so that we see you and we'll get to you. You want to handle the next one?
Oh, Minnieville?
Yep.
Please talk about the Minnieville Raceway. What can be done to slow speeding here? Okay, I'm gonna go first, and just what I see as a visionary thing. It's not even vision, it's actually happening, but it's not going to happen overnight. One of the key things that I believe is going to help out Minnieville and slow that road, and I always say it's about the backstory and what that traffic is really doing. That traffic is coming from 66, cutting across through 234, going to 95 in the morning, and in the evening doing the opposite reverse. And it's doing it on a crossroads that are allowing people to zip up and down these roads. We just approved the courts district, and the key to that courts district, which is going to tie to this just a little bit, is that interchange improvement that we're doing with the Spooey, with the parkway going under Minnieville. Minnieville is going to take on another light. I'm not a fan of traffic lights, because traffic lights allow for T-bones and rear ends because people are running them. But we're going to have to train ourselves to get back into the fact that a traffic light means stop and go and slow down, not speed up. But Minnieville truly should not be a road that cuts through for folks to get to their final destination, which generally most times is out of this county. So that is one thing I'm looking at that's going to help improve that road. We still got more work to do on that road as well, but I think that's where we're going to have our creative discussions about red light cameras and speed zones and all of this sort of stuff. Can I open up for my police or VDOT if you want to chime in on that?
Mr. Angry, this is Lieutenant Mayor. That question was brought up at the Dale City Civic Association meeting, and they were primarily talking about where Minnieville meets Darbydale, and going either east or west on there. And it is like a speedway. For us, Minnieville is a very difficult road to do enforcement on, so it ties in really well with what Mr. Wyman was saying about possibly speed cameras or traffic cameras. I know that I believe in the program, they're looking at the speed cameras for the school zones and red light cameras for places like that. And of course, that would be for everybody to choose where they would go. But places like that area right there is very difficult for us to do speed enforcement because we don't have a place to safely have the officer sit and use LiDAR that's safe for the public and safe for the officer as well. But that is a very valid question. It's a very fast road.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Supervisor Angry, Supervisor Boddye. Yes, with that stretch of Minnieville by Darbydale, is definitely a concern. Unfortunately, it's not the only road. And the Department of Transportation, again, like I say, we're working with police. We're looking at alternatives. We're looking at, unfortunately, the current state statutes only allow photo enforcement in school zones. So that wouldn't be one of the places that we would be able to do that. But again, like I say, if we can free up officers from these other areas by doing that, that potentially is one of those things. But again, we're always looking at trying to improve our network. That road, as we widen, put that auxiliary lane on Route 1, not on Route 1, sorry, on 95 there in the Woodbridge district, that will help relieve some of that traffic. The Van Buren study that we're looking at, that will help connect 234 to Cardinal and whatnot. So, every time we do one of these small improvements, we try and improve the safety and the throughput. But again, it's up to people to try, be responsible for the way they're driving.
Yeah, and I'll add just very quickly to that. Another direction that we're looking at as a board right now is as we update our land use policies and what have you, we're really looking at trying to make more major employment centers throughout the county so people don't have to drive as far to get to gainful employment, right? We have the courts district coming up. We have the landing small area plan in my district, which is just up the road from Minnieville. So we're also trying to make more employment centers and less food deserts and a lot of more amenities centralized in these communities of interest, so people don't have to fly down Minnieville or Old Bridge or Dale Boulevard to get to somewhere they need to go, because of that, if they're going to the doctor's office, the grocery store, to work, if work is much closer to home or these grocery stores much closer to home, they're a lot less likely to have to drive or fly across the county. So I just wanted to add that too, as a slightly different way we're trying to approach this. To go along with this conversation about Minnieville, the next question is about specifically the intersection of Minnieville and Smoketown. It's been the scene of a lot of accidents recently. I know there's been some very bad accidents in the last 6 to 8 months about it. People running the red light, people sort of cutting each other off as they try to turn on or out of that corridor. What can be done to stop this problem? Can a police car be positioned there, or is that also under consideration for the red light camera pilot?
So again, that intersection is a challenging intersection. There's a lot of things happening there. A lot of it's a commuter corridor. It's a shopping area. It's residents. I know the police are doing everything they can to try to do enforcement there. So I see in the chat there, there's also how many red light cameras are there in county and how many intersections are allowed by law. So currently there's no photo enforcement in Prince William County. City of Manassas and Manassas Park have it, but not the county. By law, the red light cameras, we're allowed one intersection per 10,000 people. So that's up to 48 cameras if the program proceeds and gets fully rolled out based on the current code. There's over 350 intersections in the county. So we will, one of the challenges that we've identified is how to identify which intersections need it. It's very easy to turn around and say, this is a very busy intersection, but it may not actually be a very dangerous intersection. Or we also don't want to put all of these resources all in one corridor. We want to try use them in a way that they change behavior across the county. So that's one of the things we're looking at. I also know that we're working with VDOT to look at that intersection to try to do some pedestrian safety improvements at that intersection and in that area. But again, like I say, it's it's one of those areas where we have some very busy roads, mixed use, mixed traffic. And unfortunately, it doesn't matter what we do, we're not going to be able to engineer our way out of it or enforce our way out of it either. But that is definitely one of the intersections that will be being considered potentially if a red light enforcement program does proceed.
Lieutenant Baker, I think I saw you unmute yourself for a second. Did you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, I just, that is an intersection. We try to do as much enforcement as we can because it is incredibly busy. But unfortunately, we just can't place a police car in there like we would want to maybe make people be a little more observant of the yellow lights proceeding into red lights. And we did have one fatality there. That was, I believe, back in April of this year. And a lot of people don't know when that occurred, there was actually another officer in the intersection that was assisting another motorist at that time that observed that crash when it occurred. It is, but we try to do all we can with that intersection, but it's very hard to find a safe spot to sit and observe the lights in the activity there.
Appreciate that. And so the last question we have for sort of these corridors, just north of the Minnieville corridor, we have the Old Bridge corridor. And the question is, are there any new updates on the planned crosswalk at Old Bridge Road and Colby Drive?
Unfortunately, Supervisor, I don't have that information on me. I can try reach out to Megan and wanted to get that, but we'll get that information for you and share that with you.
All right, we'll get that.
I know there's a lot of projects going on along the Old Bridge corridor, as you no doubt know, and whatnot. So I'll try to get that for you before the end of this meeting.
I do see Megan just unmuted herself, so she might be able to save you from this one, Richard.
Yes, Supervisor. So we did receive full funding for a road project on Old Bridge Road between Colby and Minnieville, and that project includes constructing missing segments of sidewalk as well as crosswalks. So we have the funding. That's the good news. Unfortunately, that funding will not be available for a few years. So the status is still a few years out.
Thank you for that update, Megan. Take the next one.
Yeah. And just Ms. Eleanor, we see your hand, so we're going to get through some directed questions and then open up to you all for your questions. So
I had a pre-question. I actually wrote a pre-question, but it was general, so I wanted to be specific. So you may not have me.
So which one is your pre-question?
It was about the actual pedestrian accident. My daughter was hit by a car this year, so I wanted to address that. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Was it at one of the intersections we've already discussed?
No.
Okay. Since we are talking about sort of traffic fatalities before we move to enforcement PD, if you could, ma'am, just please keep it very brief because we do have a lot of other questions, but if you want to just address it really quickly.
Well, this is kind of about pedestrian. Sure, thank you. That's why I'm here, but just about pedestrian traffic. So I've heard it's on Minnieville and Andorra where it connects to Hereford. Okay. So the solutions and the discussions that happened here would not actually help my daughter not being hit. So she was hit in the daylight and she was actually hit by somebody who was making a left turn on a green. Okay. So she was crossing at a crosswalk by an unlicensed driver. Okay. So we've had some accidents there, not just my daughter, but accidents that have actually burned down a house there by an unlicensed driver. Anyway, this person took a left. So obviously this is a hot issue in this corner of unlicensed drivers hitting people and houses and fences. So, what could we do there? I think crosswalks could be definitely repainted. I know one side is starting to fade. I think turn signals need to be looked at on the green to say, should they really be flashing? Should they be, when there is a pedestrian, should they be red until that pedestrian crosses? And then also, I don't think we see enough police stops. I think we need to see more people. And if they don't have a license, that's actually a bigger deal because it has been definitely minimized and we have gone through the court process and it's not such a big deal and it needs to be a big deal. So that needs to be prevented. Also speeding, the traffic cut through, I appreciate that, but actually when there's that much volume, there's not speeding. Okay, the cut through makes it actually slow. The speeding is mostly happening late at night. So I guess I would ask, how do you prevent pedestrians from being hit? Bridges, better signaling, better painting on the roadway, and making sure people who don't have licenses really don't drive. So that's what I had to say. She didn't die, fortunately, but she didn't walk for a while, and she's been in recovery for several months. And our cat was hit as well. She was with her in a harness. I mean, it was daylight, it was bright, and it didn't have to happen. And if this woman had a license, or if the signals maybe, or the paint, if she was at a red, she wouldn't have hit her. So
Yeah. Thank you very much, Thomas. I'm sorry that it happened.
Yep.
I want to say too, very sorry that accident happened, but you did, we always talk about low hanging fruit. And so if that crosswalk needs to be repainted, and it's, that can be something, and Richard, I'm sure you heard that, and we can look at that to see if we can, repaint those, get them back visible. And then, the issue with unlicensed driver, it's bigger than this issue, but
sure,
it is something that we definitely will take up and try to figure out how to really address that, maybe working with, over here, where we get the license plates.
DMV?
Yeah, DMV, and trying to figure out something. So maybe there's some things we can look at there, but I do appreciate some of your recommendations and issues. I think we can tackle a few of those head on real quick, and I can use local funding to do that. So
okay,
can I have you do this? Can you call me tomorrow or email me?
Sure.
vsangry@pwc.gov. Hopefully you got that. Yeah, I'll put it in the chat. And then so let's talk about that. Get some real things that we can really do now. I know some of the other stuff is probably going to take a few years down the road, but the things we can do now, I want to do now. So okay, and I'm glad your daughter is okay, and hopefully the cat's okay too.
3.5 months later, the cat was recovered by a local rescue organization.
Okay.
So so thank you. And I will say that the fire department response, I was not there when she was hit, and I got there very quickly, and the fire department was already there. So one of the ways pedestrians can stay alive is our response with the fire department. So just to add that as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for that, ma'am. So next question, the prearranged ones. This is an enforcement police department question, but obviously open to everyone else based on how this goes. It feels like traffic laws are not being enforced as heavily anymore, especially along Richmond Highway and Woodbridge. Running red lights, turning without stopping, speeding seem to be the new normal. Miss Thomas actually spoke to some of those issues just now. I see police observing traffic violations, but not necessarily acting. Why is the question?
I guess that question would be coming to me.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Just to give you a quick snapshot for enforcement from this year, I decided to go from July 1 to 11/11 of this year. And so I ran the same stats from the same time frame for last year. And this year, we as a department in that time frame have written 7,454 summonses. In the same time frame last year, we'd written 6,141. So we've actually written 1,300 more summonses this year. So that's quite a bit more. Maybe sometimes it seems like we may not be enforcing as much. We're trying to do as much as we can, but unfortunately, there's a lot more people back on the road again coming out of COVID, as has already been mentioned prior. And so we try to do the best we can, and we try to make as many enforcements as we can. But unfortunately, we can't get everybody. I wish we could get everybody that's doing stuff that should be stopped, but with that means there's a lot more stops that have occurred this year during this time frame than last year. So
Appreciate that.
Yeah, and I will add to that too. When we recognize on our board, kind of supervise that we need more police officers, and so we're going to be heavily addressing that. You may have recalled from the board meeting that Chair Will and me spoke about looking at how can we get some funding in to really address our shortages. And that's something. So we know that our police department is in heavy demand. And I know they're doing still with what they have the best for providing the services that we need. We just got to do our part to work with you all. So Lieutenant, recognize that, and we're gonna definitely be helping you all out. Now, this next question, I've had, we've all heard this one a lot, but I got to tell you. So why is panhandling allowed in medians? And to kind of tie with that is with all of the reckless driving, running red lights, and deadly crashes, that these folks are in the median. And really, when you look at pedestrian safety, that's a heavy one. Who wants to take a stab at that?
I guess I'll take a stab at that, sir.
Yes, sir.
We actually used to enforce that pretty heavily with a law that we would use called careless interference traffic. Careless interference of traffic has now become, if people don't understand, has now become a secondary charge. It is not a primary charge. So therefore, even if we see somebody step off the median to take money or something from somebody or give something to somebody, we can't enact on that right away because that is not a primary charge. We have to be brought there such as to, I know this doesn't make sense, but as a crash. And then if a crash occurred and it was because of the careless interference of traffic, we could then charge that. We've been working with, let me pull it up here, with the Commonwealth Attorney and the County Attorney. And we think that we found a new law. It's not new, but it would be new to be used by us. It would give us statutory authority to cite people who are using the median to panhandle. Panhandling itself is not illegal, as that was deemed many years ago. So asking for money is not illegal. It's just where it may be at. So that's something we're doing right now. The Commonwealth Attorney has already okayed it. We're just looking through, trying to get the okay with the County Attorney to make sure they have no issues with us using that state statute.
All right. Thank you, sir. I saw Richard had a...
Supervisor Angry, Supervisor Boddye, just to add to that, again, sadly, this is another behavioral thing. And I realize there's some people out there that are very desperate, especially in the current environment, who need help. And there's a lot of social services programs that this board in particular has spearheaded a lot of improvements on that. So there are a lot of facilities and services out there. If people stop giving money to the people panhandling in the middle of the street, potentially that would stop panhandlers. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is a lot of these panhandlers aren't actually desperate. They're professionals. They and some of them are syndicated and those kind of things. So again, you want to do something nice. You want to help people. There are a lot of volunteer groups and those kind of things that do that. You're probably better off giving money to those organizations than you are to the panhandlers in the street. So that's just something to consider, because if people stop giving them money, they would probably go away.
So the next question we have was already addressed. It's about the speed and red light camera program. Mr. Wyman spoke to that quite extensively, so we'll skip that one. The next one is one that's near and dear to the hearts of folks in my district, but frankly, a lot of folks in the region, especially in that Route 123 one corridor. The merge at Gordon Boulevard, Route 123 and Old Bridge Road is dangerous. What is being done to address this? So I will sort of cue this one up a little bit for both Megan and Richard. We are working on a flyover ramp that will take folks off of 95 and then fly them over that intersection onto Old Bridge Road. Why that's important is, as everyone knows, once you get off of 95 and you would turn left on the Old Bridge Road from that northbound lane, you're playing Frogger.
Yeah,
you're zooming in and out of people who are going straight through to Fairfax. You're zooming around people who are doing the same thing you are. It's chaos a little bit. You're taking your life into your own hands. So we understand it 100%. The flip side of that is the folks that are coming southbound. We know a lot of the frustration in that intersection are folks, especially at the end of the day, coming back into Prince William County. And for whatever reason, be it the traffic on 95 or whatever it is, folks are coming down from Lorton through Fairfax onto the bridge, and then they're stuck sitting there sometimes as far back as the bridge in the county line, waiting to turn right on the Old Bridge Road from that southbound side. Sometimes some of them are actually waiting to go straight through the Fredericksburg 95 entrance as well. So not only is the flyover part of that consideration for that intersection improvement, we're also looking at doing some improvement to that right turn lane going southbound to make it less of a log jam for that entire intersection. So that being queued up, it is something that our office has been working on for quite some time. We are building the funds to get it done. We're actually doing some right-of-way stuff with it as well. But I will open it up to Richard and Megan if they want to add to that as well.
Supervisor, I think you covered quite well what the proposed improvements are. I couldn't agree more with the resident who said that's a dangerous movement coming off and making that merge and trying to make a left turn. We recently completed a very comprehensive planning study that was funded by VDOT and overseen by them and done in coordination with the county and of course your office that looked at that intersection. So we have a very detailed proposed improvements for there. In terms of funding for the project, it is a mobility bond project, but in case residents are not aware, to date, we have not taken any debt out for mobility bond projects because we have been successfully securing grant funding. So at this point, we have secured over 13 million in grant funding for the Old Bridge 123 improvements. And it has been submitted for some major funding sources, including Smart Scale and some of these federal programs out there. So we're waiting to hear back from them. So at this point, we're able to move this project along. We're already in the design phase for it without touching any of that taxpayer funds.
Outstanding. Appreciate that, Megan. The last thing I'll add to that is, especially the STAR study that we're looking at for that intersection is part of a much more comprehensive study that's looking at the entire 123 corridor, because we know that's a corridor of interest going from that Old Bridge 123 corridor to 95 all the way down to Route 1. So we know that's an area that a lot of our residents, no matter where they live in the county, interact with all the time, every day. So we are really looking at it. And Alexandra, I see you wanted to add to that.
Yes, I just wanted to add that VDOT has just awarded the project that was in September this year for Route 123 and I-95 intersection reconfiguration. This is progressive design build project. It is information available on VDOT webpage as well. The construction is anticipated to begin in summer 2025 to be completed in late 2027. And at the cost of about $76 million, and its project is fully funded. So, like I said, September, the project was awarded. They are in the starting, the field investigation, survey, gathering traffic data, geotech, borings, and so forth. There will be opportunities for public input as well as this project progresses because it is the design build project. So. Mark Gibney on VDOT in VDOT is the project manager if anyone wants to contact him for additional information. Thank you.
That's great news. Thank you for that, Alexandra. And as always, thank you to our partners with you and the rest of VDOT for helping us with these projects.
Yes.
Next one.
All right, here's a good question here. What are we doing to educate drivers on driving rules and etiquette, such as left lane should be the passing or fast lane? This is not true in all other countries or states. People come here from everywhere and may not realize this. Now, I will say to that, I've always asked that question. Maybe we need refresher once we get our driver's license, because once we get a driver's license, we seem to be experts for the rest of our lives. Well, I think that just becomes bad habits, just like a bad golf swing. But I do know that we do have a lot of, America is more diverse now, and we have a lot of drivers from everywhere. So to that point, I'm not so sure we aren't missing something in our driving experience. And maybe that is a DMV kind of figure out, we can do a scrub every now and then on that. I don't know that answer. I think it's a great discussion point, and maybe we can bring that up. Does anybody want to chime in on that? I think that's really more of a question for Kenny and I, but Richard, you want to chime in on that?
Certainly, Supervisor. So I grew up in South Africa. I've lived all over the world, and I learned to drive on the other side of the road. So I always joke I drive down the middle of the road. The laws and whatnot are different. And the other thing is, I got my license. I'm not going to say how many years ago, but more years ago than I'd like to admit. And laws and rules change. Traffic patterns also change. You learn to drive. If you learn to drive in Prince William County in the 1980s, it's a very different county now to what it was then. And again, like I say, we all get older. Our eyesight isn't as good at night. Our reflexes aren't as good, etc. There is no real formal process for recertification or anything like that. But that is something, again, that we're looking at. One of the things that's changing in the industry as a whole is, we've always tried to enforce our way out of this or engineer our way out of this. And one of the things we're trying to do is try get more holistic approach, trying to get more education out there, more general engagement. Again, the point that was made earlier, improving emergency services, because that can literally make the difference between a serious accident and a fatality. And whatnot. One of the problems we have is people in this area just generally are not courteous drivers. In other parts of the country and other parts of the world, the behavior is different. It's tough. If anyone has any ideas, we will definitely do that. Again, like I say, our working group works with DMV. DMV leads those education outreach campaigns and those kind of things. If anyone has any ideas for campaigns or ways we can engage and get those messages out there, please, we're open to ideas, and we will try make them happen.
Thank you for that, Richard. Next question is sort of very specific to my district. What else is being considered for cut-throughs, such as Cavalier, Jenny Lane, and Rollingwood Drive? Richard, I'm looking at you for this one. But if Megan and anyone else from transportation want to talk about cut-throughs more broadly, and so these side streets that we have alongside major thoroughfares like Old Bridge, however you'd like to address that, we would appreciate it.
So cut-through traffic is something that we've seen increase a lot since the Waze, Google Maps came on board. 10 years ago, a few people knew a cut through around the back here or through here, or whatever the case is. But nowadays, I don't know, there's an accident on 95, everyone gets funneled down Route 1, then there's an accident on Route 1, and all of a sudden you got 30,000 vehicles going through a neighborhood back there. It's extremely challenging. And of course, the problem is once the cat's out the bag and people realize there's a backup route there, they start taking it. And this comes to the point that I think the supervisors made a little bit earlier. What we're trying to do is increase the throughput on our main corridors. Things like the Gordon interchange, the changes we're looking at doing at the intersection of Old Bridge and Parkway, the interchange that might happen at Parkway and Miniville. If we can encourage people to get onto those main corridors, then going through the back roads doesn't become as feasible. There are residential traffic calming measures we can put in place if there's speeding and whatnot, such as speed humps and those kind of things. But again, we need to meet certain standards before we qualify for those. It's just very challenging, and unfortunately, again, like I say, the county 20, 30 years ago was a very different county to what it is now. It's grown a lot. It's probably going to continue to grow, roads that used to be country roads 20 years ago are no longer country roads, and we need to adapt and respond to that as best we can, unfortunately.
Yeah. So we do have a bunch more pre-arranged questions, but I think in the interest of getting the folks who want to ask online, we'll just do 2 more of these pre-asked questions, and then we'll jump to Al, who's been very patient, and we'll go to the rest of the folks. So all right, for the next one.
Just like one.
Oh, okay. I'll do this. Occoquan and the Neabsco districts have several projects which raise concern for bike ped safety. such as the intersection along 123 and Old Bridge Road. We already talked about that one, 195 and Route 1 and Parkway and I-95. Are we considering ways to separate bike and pedestrian from motorized vehicles?
So again, I guess this is me. I guess that's what I do, right? So yes, we are. We're always looking at ways to. In an ideal world, we would be able to separate bikes and pedestrians perfectly all the time. We'd get the signal timing right, and I mean, if we can avoid those conflict points, then we've achieved that. Unfortunately, that's not always practical or reality. A lot of the roads that you just mentioned and the places where we have the most challenging circumstances are in areas that already were built out and developed. Old Bridge Road, for example, we have right-of-way issues. So if we're going to build huge trails that are separated and all those kind of things, we're probably going to have to end up taking properties and that kind of thing. So it becomes very, very challenging and difficult to do. But that is something we'll continue looking at. We have lots and lots of sidewalk projects and we're doing a lot of intersection and crosswalk improvements. We're trying to improve the street lighting and those kind of things as well. But again, like I say, unfortunately, we are a big district or a big county. In smaller cities and those kind of things, it's sometimes easier to maintain and create a higher density bike networks. And in our small area plans and targeted plans like that, we're building in those facilities for that. Unfortunately, to do it county-wide is very challenging, and the most challenging places are these older neighborhoods where they weren't designed with these facilities in mind, and to go in and retrofit them in these legacy neighborhoods is very challenging, but it is something we are trying to do.
Yeah. Hey, can I, and if I could just chime in, a lot of this discussions I've been having with bikers and roadway is shared roadways. If you go into like DC or well-established metropolitan cities, you have a bike lane on the roadway. That concerns me for Prince William County because we aren't used to that yet. And at some point we're going to have to get there. I just don't know where that starts because of all the accidents we're seeing right now, even with folks just walking on a sidewalk with automobile accidents. So I'm worried about putting the two of those together, a bike and a car on the same road in Prince William County. And I know on the parkway, we kind of see that sometimes. You see these fearless bikers just riding down the parkway, even up Purcell, which is interesting to me. I worry about that because people right now, I hate to use the word reckless, but when it comes to pedestrians on a bike on the road, I just, I worry about that. And, being in this position, I don't like to lose lives. So I'd like to try to do all I can to protect life. And I want to have a shared lane, bike lane and on the roadway, but it's, we got to do some education on that. I'd have to say, so.
Yeah. Go on, Richard.
Certainly, Supervisor. And one of the challenges, again, is like I say, we're not a small city. Even if we compare ourselves to DC, our footprint is much, much bigger. And the reason why that's important to understand is you can slow down the roads in these tight centers and stuff and start sharing roads. But when you got roads that are posted at 40, 45, 50 miles per hour, you can't safely share a lane with a bicycle. If it's below 40 miles per hour, you can start doing that. And most of the roads that we have these challenges are faster roads. And as we previously spoke about, we can't just, if we drop the speed limit on Prince William Parkway to 35 miles per hour, so we could share the road with bicycles, no one's going to obey that, and it becomes unattainable. And that's why we try to build these off-road trails. Now, I know there's a lot of complaints from the keen bikers that the trails aren't maintained necessarily to the same standard as the roads and whatnot. We understand that. And again, we have miles and miles of roads that VDOT needs to maintain and miles of trails. The key thing is to try to give a facility that people of different levels can use and that they can get around. So, we try to do the best we can with what we have, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Richard. And I think that's part of the crux of the issue that we have is, and I know someone had mentioned both in the pre-questions and online, a road like Hoadley Road, which is wide. There's a lot of room on both sides of it. But to Richard's point, people are going 45, 55, sometimes 65 miles an hour if you hit all those green signal lights along Hoadley. And that's no matter what you try to do with that, it's always going to be sort of a dangerous proposition to have bicycles alongside those major corridors where you have people who are speeding quite a bit. Now, side streets, some of our smaller corridors, it's a little bit easier to do that, make bump outs, make some of these other traffic improvements alongside of those bicycle improvements. So it's a little bit safer for those. But there are still challenges there. And I think we'll have to think more holistically about how we build out our trail network and our shared use paths to really make alternatives so bikers can still go sort of parallel to some of these large corridors without having to be right on them in danger.
I think this is a great question. Okay. Yeah, so and we're going to get this last question and go into still some question and answer. So please provide an update on the widening of I-95 South between exit 160 and 158B.
I think that's the auxiliary lane project.
Yeah.
Yes, this is Alexandra. So this project should be completed this year. We are in the final stages. So hopefully, the weather will cooperate and we should be able to complete it soon. It should. That's all I've got at this point.
All right, and that's great news.
Yeah. One of these days, we'll be able to help get a big huddle of you, Alexandra, and VDOT folks, our transportation, Transurban, everyone else who need to bring heaven and earth together to finally get things widened on the more northern part of that before we get to 160, because I know everyone on this call at some point in their lives living in this area has gotten stuck trying to get into the beginning of our district here in Occoquan at that 160 exit. But this is a key part of that because we widened everything up until that point, makes it easier to then tackle that portion of it too. So I appreciate that. That said, we're going to be moving into some of our audience questions. Mr. Alborn, I know you've been very patient. We appreciate you. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question, sir.
Thank you, Supervisor Angry and Supervisor Boddye for hosting this great event. A quick comment before I get to the real reason I want to talk. I did a column about GIS, the folks that do the maps for Prince William County. And to my surprise, they have an overlay for roads that are considered dangerous for bikes. Like I live off of Purcell, and it strikes me, wouldn't it be really nice if there were signs on the access to the roads, this road is dangerous for bikes, because the data already exists. As to the real reason I wanted to comment, I also wrote a column about our motorcycle unit, or motors. And one of the things that impressed me, as an old soldier, and you're with me on this probably, Supervisor Angry, the goal is to make folks kind of always aware of a threat of being caught. And what impressed me about motors was their mobility. And it occurred to me that people are going to blow through stop signs, blow through stops. Rules are for people who obey them. You put all the stop signs you want in, and if people don't obey them, they go through. But if we increased funding for motorcycles, so there were more of them on the road, and their mobility meant they were all over the place, I suggest that might increase people reconsidering running that light. Because I know occasionally there's motorcycles on Purcell, rarely, but I never forget when I saw one more than once. So I'm always, not that I ever sped.
Never, no, absolutely
not
not.
I, but for those other people. So I suggest you look into the possibility of putting more motorcycles on the street. Because all they do is traffic.
I'm pretty sure
motorcycles being lots of places might just make for a more civil society.
Yes, and I'm pretty sure Lieutenant Beckman loves, and he's over there saying amen to your comments. Because
one last thing to you, the idea of cameras on stoplights, is it legal to move those cameras around like motorcycle cops? So that people will never really know.
Right.
And I don't know, there's probably a legality, of course, laws can be changed, but the idea of mobile stoplight cameras.
So there are some challenges to that. The first one is the current code doesn't or the state code doesn't specifically say you can or cannot do that.
But we can change that.
It says currently that you're allowed 1 per 10,000 people, which means we can have about 48 in the county. Now, with that being said, part of the what we're looking at as part of the study is, yeah, that makes sense. And once we start seeing compliance at an intersection, we will want to move that. The question is how frequently, and it's the same with school zones. You could potentially, we have about 100 schools, over 100 schools, and I think 95 school zones in the county. So we could potentially move those between those different school zones, depending. So that is something that we are looking at as one of the operational rules. But I think the first step that we're probably going to do, and again, this depends on direction from the board, is probably to look at maybe just rolling out with a pilot and starting small at some of the key intersections. The reality is, we have over 350 intersections. Most of those intersections are probably fine, or not worth investing that kind of thing in. Again, it's probably going to be our main corridors and whatnot. But you're 100% right. I remember going to a meeting once where someone turned around and said to me, the only time my stop sign works is when there's a police officer standing next to it. So unfortunately, that's the reality we live in. So it's definitely something we will look at.
And Richard, could you also address the first prompt that Mr. Alborn gave us in terms of those areas of the county where there's already an overlay of deemed unsafe corridors? Is there, and I'm looking at Alexandra too, because I know both of you can sort of talk to the signage and the VDOT rules on that. Is there current signage that exists at all that sort of speaks to that? Saying, hey, unsafe for bicyclists, or bicyclists, use this street at your own peril or something like that. Is there anything like that that exists currently?
I'm not aware of that GIS layer, and that's something I'm going to be looking at tomorrow to try to find out that, because again, that's probably based on some study or report that was done. As to your comment, is there any road in the county that is safe or that you don't use at your own peril? My answer to that is every roads are inherently dangerous. Driving on roads and moving around is probably one of the most dangerous things we do, and we take it for granted. Because most of us spend most of our day sitting around at a desk and those kind of things. And when you speak to the first responders that respond to these accidents and stuff, it becomes all too real for them. Unfortunately, for most motorists, we've built roads. If you look at the way the roads were in the 1960s and to today, and the improvements that have been made, the whole generation of drivers that are driving on roads today, I think there's a sort of remoteness of the fact that driving is inherently dangerous. And again, Supervisor Boddye, Angry is going to love this. One of the ways we can improve safety on roads is, as Mr. Alborn said, is to get other modes of transportation out there. Getting people to do more commuting by bus and public services, because every time we get one of those cars off the road, that's one hazard off, and public transport is one of the safest, is much safer than driving a car. But that's again a big behavioral shift, and it's an attitude shift. And in other parts of the world, we see this where there are viable alternatives. In Prince William County, unfortunately, there aren't really viable alternatives. And as we grow, we're going to try build these out as part of our mobility strategy.
Great point.
And I would like to echo what Richard said. I will also be checking with our GIS folks at VDOT if such layer is existent, and I'm not aware of any such signs. And like Richard mentioned, driving is a hazardous activity. So I'll check on that.
One last comment on that. We are continually, looking at accident patterns, where they're happening, etc., volumes of traffic, because every time we fix something, we break something somewhere else. We just often moving the problem around. And as the county grows, and when we look at the most dangerous intersections that were there 4, 5, 10 years ago, many of those intersections have been massively improved, or projects have gone ahead. Widening of Route 1 in Ripon, the diverging diamond in Haymarket, the overpass we're building right now, Borsford Road. All these projects are addressing these dangerous locations. So we do definitely look at that. But I'm not specifically aware of a bike ped layer. That's probably something our bike and trail guys will know, be more aware of.
Yeah, when we see you, Captain, you see you. Feel free to jump in.
Yes, sir. I should say welcome. I came back real quick. Mr. Alborn, thank you for your support of our traffic unit. That is a unit that sometimes is loved and hated at the same time because of what they do. But be aware, be assured that we are and they're out there with their motors, and then we have some of our slick tops and some of the cars that have radar. So I wish I can have an officer at every corner. I would slow things down, but as you know, it's a big county. But thank you for the support for the traffic unit.
Yeah, and I'll just want to reinforce something to that Supervisor Angry said earlier, that we get that a major part of public safety and our police personnel is traffic safety. So as we continue to have conversations with folks like the captain, like Chief Newsham, like Dan Alexander, who's our Deputy County Executive for Public Safety, of building out those police staffing plans to make sure that some component of that includes these motors, these other traffic safety folks. So as we build out this whole holistic view of public safety, we know that traffic safety is a key part of that. So that is something we're working on.
Yeah.
So any other questions from the audience? We have about 13 minutes left. If no one wants to ask any more questions, we do have some final prearranged questions, but we did want to open it up for you all who are still here with us to ask any questions you might have of our panel.
We'll jump on it.
All right, jump on it.
I guess we'll finish up bike ped safety. Often accidents involving pedestrians involve poor or missing pedestrian infrastructure and excessively fast roadway design speeds. Will the county be joining other NOVA localities in developing a data-driven Vision Zero program based on a safe system approach to address this issue? And I see your hand down, so we'll come back to you.
All right, Supervisor Angry, yes, we the county is not currently looking at a Vision Zero plan. What we are looking at, and we're working with our regional partners, VDOT and MCOG, is what is called a towards zero approach. When you look at Vision Zero, the challenge, again, as we've already kind of touched on, is when you look at the successful implementations of Vision Zero around the world, they've been in very small areas where there's a lot of alternatives available, and the county currently doesn't have those. So as we build those out, we will move towards that. One of the things that we have done is we applied for a Safe Streets for All grant to develop a traffic safety action plan across the county, and that will go towards working to build that and to identify areas where we can potentially implement a Vision Zero approach in certain areas, or maybe along certain corridors. But with such a big and diverse county where we got really rural roads like Joplin and Aden on the one side, and roads like Route 1 and then interchanges, and then you compound it with the towns like Dumfries and Haymarket and whatnot, it becomes very difficult to do Vision Zero. But with that said, we are working with our MCOG and VDOT. They have a lot of programs and whatnot, and we are doing a lot, and we are building it would actually be interesting. I haven't actually looked, but how many of our actual CRP projects are pedestrian focused, and a lot of them are that we are trying to work on to improve that. We aren't only building infrastructure for cars. We work with OmniRide. We work with all these other things, VRE. We work to try to get that infrastructure, and so people have viable alternatives, so they don't need to use the roads.
Okay, thank you, Richard, for that.
And then we have a couple of folks who have raised their hand. We figured that might happen after we sort of shocked everyone by opening it up completely. We're going to go in order. So Mr. Don Wood, if you would like to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. And this was such a great seminar on traffic and planning. I'm quite impressed, and thank you all for participating. I just had a quick question, which is on traffic circles. And we don't see them here. They're not part of how we plan. I've always thought they were probably a good idea, avoiding these terrible T intersections where you're at a red light and wasting a lot of energy waiting for it to turn green, and there's always some commotion in the intersection. Are traffic circles even possible in the county today, or are it's just not going to happen?
So before Richard, you jump in on that, I will say I know of at least one. It's in my district near Old Hickory Golf Course. And there's a couple of them there that actually work quite well. I'm actually a big believer in traffic circles. I think a lot of our legacy intersections, especially in neighborhoods near schools and things like that, where we know people blow through stop signs all the time. Excuse us. There we go. We know that people can blow through stop signs, but we know it's a lot harder to try to blow through a roundabout and what have you. So I'm with you. And with that, Richard and Alexandra and even Megan, whoever wants to talk about roundabouts, please do.
Certainly, Supervisor Boddye, Supervisor Angry. Thanks. That's a great comment or question. Roundabouts are definitely a solution that works in a lot of cases. They aren't the only one. There's something called alternative intersections, and this is something that's grown a lot in the last few years. You know, we are looking at designing some. That one just got put in out towards the town of Haymarket recently. We have some down in Fuller Heights Road project is going to be a big roundabout. There's also mini roundabouts, and then there's also alternative intersection designs. So these are things like jug handles, diverging diamond like we have in Haymarket. These kind of things have a lot of the benefits of moving traffic through safely depending on the geometry. One of the challenges with roundabouts is they need a very big footprint. So again, when we try, for example, Old Bridge Road is not viable to put in roundabout because, again, the right-of-way issues. But as we move forward with new developments and whatnot, you are going to see more of those kind of alternative intersections coming through. We have a long list of them. Alexandra, perhaps you can put up the link onto the VDOT website where there's a whole range of different alternative intersection designs. And one of the things that VDOT now requires is what it's called a V-just analysis. And this is where we look at different intersection designs rather than just putting in another signal. Signals used to be the old simple way of doing things. And nowadays, when we get a request for a signal or multi-way stop, we got to look at all these other alternatives to find out if there's a safer, better alternative that can be implemented. So you will see more of those kind of things happening in the county as we move forward in the next few years.
I appreciate that. And Alexandra, I saw you unmute yourself right at the beginning there. Anything you wanted to add? Okay. All right, so
sorry, I was going to post the link to the alternative intersection on VDOT webpage. There is plenty of information. Anybody can look it up, and I'm going to post it for everyone.
Thank you for that, Alexandra. And I know we're running low on time here. I see that we have one last hand that's up, and then we'll go around and let folks on our panel give their closing remarks. So Miss Lori Lachak, sorry if I mispronounced your name. You have the floor. Please ask your question.
Hi, thank you so much for hosting this. Yeah, traffic safety is so important. This is an easy, quick one, and that is I was driving last night on Old Bridge Road, and granted it was dark and we had the rain. It was so hard to see the lines. And, you know, when you've got 3 lanes like that, cars were often, especially when you go through an intersection, you weren't sure where the lane lines were. And I noticed a lot of us were having challenges. I know it's exacerbated when it rains, but I just wondered if periodically somebody can kind of check and see, you know, maybe repaint with something a little you know, that would be a little more visible, or, you know, something to just kind of help us know where those lanes are.
I appreciate that question because as you, Ms. Lachak, you know, we actually just repaved and are milling part of Old Bridge Road. To me, that's a perfect opportunity to repaint it with some of these newer paints that we've out there that are a lot more reflective and have better visibility, especially in low light and in inclement weather. So Richard, I think that one's a great one for you if you wanted to address that one.
Certainly, thank you. You know, markings, especially in poor weather and weather conditions, you know, yesterday was terrible. And again, as I said, we're going into winter, there's going to be salt on roads, all those kind of things. People need to be double cautious. The paint that is used by VDOT on the roads is a thermoplastic reflective paint. And it works extremely well. That is the I guess the gold standard or the industry standard that is used by that. Similarly, the reflective signs and stuff like that, they're way better than they were 10, 20, 30 years ago. And there's always developments in that. Unfortunately, you know, when you're talking about 30,000 vehicles a day going across a crosswalk or whatever the case is, that wears down quite quickly, and whatnot. So please, if you do have any intersections or anything that need restriping, repainting, that kind of maintenance work, the best thing is to reach out to VDOT. The number is, you can call is 1-800-4ROAD, or if you go to the VDOT website, you can go ahead and in the top there, in the banner at the top, you can report a problem, and you can go in there and you can report anything, signal light, the timer that's out, a pedestrian facility that's not working, lane that needs marking, anything like that. Go ahead and just go ahead and report that, and VDOT will come out and restripe that and whatnot as quickly as possible. So yeah, it's a continuous maintenance challenge, and whenever you see issues, please let us know or VDOT know, and we'll work with VDOT to get that maintenance done as quickly as possible.
Appreciate that. And since Richard, you did mention icing on the roads, we're going to go tangent to that a little bit and outside a little bit of the scope of what we talk about here. But Alexander, could you talk a little bit about the de-icing and some of the things that VDOT is doing right now to help conserve and save on the salting of the road? Because we know that salinity, especially in the Occoquan Reservoir, is something a lot of folks are concerned about. And I think that this is a perfect time to talk about that right before we wrap up everything.
Yes, Supervisor Boddye, we are gearing up for the snow season, and de-icing activities or preventative measures that we will try in advance of a storm would be the brining with a solution that is 77% of water and 23% of salt. And we apply that in right conditions when there won't be any rain that will wash it away before the snow hits. So that is quite a good measure for, helping us with the snow fighting measures. We are aware of the salt, contain and concern, and we are participating with the Department of Environmental Quality. So we have that in mind, and like I said, the solution, the brine solution, is not as concentrated, and hopefully is a little better than just spreading the salt directly. We using salt and sand mix to provide some traction and so forth, but the brining solution is a better measure and gives us, so to speak, more bang for the buck, so to speak. I wanted to also mention, for our snow season, we are prepared. We have 250,000 gallons. 250,000 gallons of that brine for the snow season. We've got about 120,000 tons of salt and 25,000 tons of sand, and we are prepared, to fight for this in the Northern Virginia district. So that is quite a bit, of preparation. I have sent little flyer snow facts to your offices, so you can include it to share with the residents. As far as the clearance goals, with the storm, if we have accumulation over 2 inches, then we start to plow plows into the subdivisions, and the residents can also monitor progress of that plowing at VDOT webpage, vdotplows.org, and I can put that in our chat as well. If there are any other questions, let me know.
Appreciate that. And that being said, we are on time, so I wanted to give all our panelists a quick round robin to give any parting thoughts they have. Wanted to also thank our panelists Yes. Both Captain Castilla, Lieutenant Baker, Alexandra, Richard, Salah, and Megan, thank you so much for helping us with this. I'm sure a lot of the constituents who are going to be watching this right now and also online after this is over, because this is recorded, so we're putting this out after we're done. We appreciate you. So we'll go in reverse order. Captain Castilla, Lieutenant Baker, did you have any parting thoughts or things you wanted to share with the constituents?
Thank you again for hosting us. This is Captain Castilla. I just want to say that we have one of the best police departments, if not the best police department in the state of Virginia and in our nation. I'm not bragging. I've been here 27 years, but we take pride in what we do. And I think thank you for the support that you all give us. If you know someone that would love to wear this uniform, we are hiring, in case you haven't heard of the staffing. So I share the website with everyone, but it's joinpwcpd.org. If you know someone of good character that would like to make a difference and help, please send them our way. And lastly, we can't do this job without you all. I know you guys are the eyes and ears in our community. So I hope you take my advice to call us when you need us, to let us know if you see something, and together we can make a great, better Prince William County. So thank you for your time, and I'll turn it over to Lieutenant Bigger, excuse me.
I'd just like to say thank you to Supervisor Angry and Supervisor Boddye for letting me and the captain be a part. And that's it.
Yeah, thank you. All right, next, Alexandra, you have the floor. Parting thoughts.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to share the information. And like I said, if anyone has any questions, please let me know. And I want to emphasize that VDOT webpage has a lot of information that you can really dig through and look at all the apps that we have, from crashes, from speed to anything that you would like to know really about all these programs and plans. So I thank you very much for the opportunity to share that with you and with the residents. Thanks.
Thank you. And I hope you all will look at that alternative intersection design page that that Alexandra put up in the chat. Those are a lot of really great intersection designs that I know Richard talked about as well, but we're getting out of the mode of just the standard, four-way stop or four-way signalized intersections. I will point out one to Supervisor Angry that I know he will enjoy, the bow tie, yes, the intersection design. So there's all types of innovative, creative ways that we can move back traffic through intersections in a much more holistic way. That said, to get to our own transportation department, Mr. Weinman, Salah, and Megan, any parting thoughts you may have, we appreciate you.
Firstly, thank you for having us. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to engage with the public. As I always say, we don't know what we don't know. I am putting my contact information up on the chat now. Please feel free to reach out to me. For those who may be attending by phone, my name is Richard Wyman. I'm Prince William County Department of Transportation. My direct telephone number is 703-792-8002. So please feel free to call me if you have any questions, concerns, if you need any help, any ideas. If you can't get hold of me or you don't have that number, reach out to your supervisor's offices. They know how to get hold of me very, very well. Or just call the county and ask for traffic engineering and you'll be put through to Salah or Y. Or if you want questions on projects, Megan and Paolo will be able to handle that. The county is a great county. We try to do a lot of things. The board and the county and VDOT and police and fire and rescue and are all committed to improving the safety of the roads. It's one of the key issues in the county, and a lot of effort and work is continually ongoing to address these concerns. But again, any ideas are welcome as we try work for them. I can tell you now that the roads in Prince William County are some of the safest roads in the country and the world. And if you drive safely and take responsibility and drive cautiously, you are unlikely to become one of these unfortunate statistics. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. There are other people on the road and sometimes you become victims of their silliness. But if you take responsible for yourself, you can do that. And just on two final closing notes, we're looking at doing a bow tie intersection at at Clover Hill there off 234. So there you go for you, Supervisor Boddye. And finally, if you don't need to drive and the weather is bad, stay home, especially if you can remote work or whatever. If you don't need to go out in the snow or in bad weather, I know we all need to get places sometimes, but the best way to avoid getting into one of these incidences is to just be sensible about it and maybe delay or change your commute or work from home or something like that. Other than that, thank you very much for this opportunity. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or need assistance.
Thank you so much, Richard. Megan, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Thank you, Supervisor Boddye and Supervisor Angry, for facilitating these conversations. I think tonight highlighted a lot of the challenges when it comes to traffic safety, but I do want to end on kind of a positive note and look at some the major opportunities coming up, and that is that this is not just a Prince William County issue, this is a national issue, and we're really seeing a immense coordinated effort that we have not seen before, truly unprecedented. Supervisor Angry can attest to the regional coordination. He is your representative on our Regional Transportation Planning Board. I recently attended the Governor's Transportation Conference. This Commonwealth of Virginia is making some massive investments and some really great initiatives. And then, of course, the federal government. We're seeing really historic investment, especially in safety. So we're not alone in this issue, and there are a lot of resources behind it. So I'm very hopeful.
Yeah, appreciate that, Megan. And then I just want to highlight that for a second before we just have final parting thoughts here. That there's been a paradigm for a long time when it comes to our competitive grant programs, the investments in infrastructure, throughput, and getting people as fast as they can through areas of our county and areas throughout the region and country, as Megan said it. We're finally at a place, excuse me again, where we're finally getting folks to acknowledge that we need, traffic safety funds. We need more resources and pots of money that are going more towards safety, pedestrian safety, motorist safety, cyclist safety, more of these safety programs versus just throughput and traffic congestion easing. So again, thank you all for joining us for this. We appreciate everything that you all do. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to our staff who are behind the scenes, who made this possible. You know, Julia, Adam, Emily from my staff, Kelly, and Ray, and Amanda from Supervisor Angry's the APSCO office. You know, we can't do what we do without them behind the scenes, making our jobs a lot easier and a lot more manageable. And of course, you all, the voting constituents and residents of Prince William County, who engage with us every single day. We are here to serve you.
Yeah, I'll be, well, I'll try to be brief because this is very important to me. Public safety is a serious issue for me, and I do not like to lose any lives. And so to continue these discussions, to have these conversations, to tackle these hard, tough situations is very important for me. I want to thank Miss Eleanor Thompson for being on this call, because you have a real personal story about your daughter being in an auto accident. And again, to the point of the things that we can immediately do to address that particular incident, that intersection, that sidewalk, to really do something there, because all of that's everywhere in the county. And we can continue talking about all the places, but we got to do things, and we're doing things. I love the gentleman's comment about the roundabouts, because we're looking at roundabouts. One thing about the APSCO district is it's an older district. So we continue to talk about how do we outfit it, because the roads are already there. And you've heard, Mr. Wyman said, these older roads are like 70s, 60s roads, and we're still driving on them with modern today. So how can we re-outfit them? Well, we know we can't put roundabouts. We know that we'd have to do some right-of-way taking, but that's not going to happen. It's just it's a long way to get things done that aren't realistic, but we can be realistic in what we do, and so I'm going to thank Megan for making the comments about the TPB, because that transportation board and what they're doing regionally and nationally is critical, and it affects all of us. And here's the bottom line, and Richard said it best: we can't pave our way out of this, and we have a lot of responsibility to take for our own public safety. And I'm going to end with this last thing. This is why, to his point, I believe public transportation is one of our best and biggest solutions that we can ever do. We got to get folks on public transportation. I'm even looking at a dedicated bus lane, maybe not 24 hours a day, but at least during rush hour. I think if we can change our mind shift to really focusing and being a part of that transportation unit would be critical. And the last thing I'll say is this: a rainstorm generally only lasts for about 5 minutes and less. When it just comes down hard pouring, people die in less than 5 minutes from driving in rainstorms too fast, and then the sun comes out. And that's a shame, I think, that in that little brief moment of time where you got caught in a situation and it's a unfortunate tragedy that all you have to do is either pull over A or not be out there B. And I know if you got to be out there, then at least do the speed limit, put your flashers on, go slow, look out for the next person in the next car, or even that biker, because people still bike in storms, and walker and all this stuff, but we got to pay better attention. So I enjoyed this conversation. Thank you, Supervisor Boddye, for putting this together, and we're going to do this again. I hope you all benefited from it, and we can all together, do our part to continue for Prince William County to be the best county in the world. I'll say that. And let's get our pedestrian safety under control. So thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Again, this will be posted online afterward. If you missed any part of it, you want to share it with your friends, family. And again, reach out to our office. We know there's a lot of questions that weren't answered, lingering things that people are concerned about. So please reach out to us. We're here to answer your questions. Thanks so much and have a great night. Stay safe out there.
Thank you.